Hello and welcome to ElleHistory. This is a Once Upon a Woman video, part of my series on the sixth wife of Henry VIII. And this week we're discussing the fourth wife of Henry VIII. We're discussing Anne of Cleves. Was she really the ugly wife? And is it really the reason why we should remember her for? Or is there more to Anne of Cleves? And can we discuss what she actually achieved, which is absolutely remarkable? Anne of Cleves was born in 1515. We're not entirely sure of the date. Some historians would say 22nd of September, others would have a date that is more around the 20th of June. She was born in Düsseldorf, and she's the second daughter of John III of the House of Lamarck and of Maria Duchess of Juliberg. And she's from the very powerful House of Cleves. What is so interesting about her background is not so much the fact that she's German, just for the fact that she's German, is the fact that her father, like Henry VIII, had decided to also remove his lands and properties from papal authority. And here again, it doesn't necessarily mean that Henry VIII and Anne of Cleves' father were very hard, Protestant, but it meant that they were defying the Pope's authority, and that is why they thought that an alliance between the Cleves and England was necessary. Furthermore, Henry VIII was kind of like now really pushed aside by Charles V of Spain and by Francis I of France, who made a treaty of Toledo and an agreement that they would no longer make an alliance with England. So he had to find other allies in Europe that would help him in case of a problem with these strong, powerful Catholic countries. So that's how we have the basic of, Anne of Cleves' marriage and why she was put at the high top of the list of a potential bride for Henry VIII, who had lost probably one of his lives, Jane Seymour, in 1537. The marriage negotiations didn't really start with John of Cleves, because he died the year before it started. But around 1539 there were discussions about a marriage with Anne of Cleves. She had everything that Henry VIII was looking for into a new bride. She was 24 years old, and so there was still the possibility of, having an heir. And there was also like this alliance, anti-papal alliance. Instead of saying Protestant alliance, I would like to say anti-papal alliance. That meant that it was very beneficial for England. The story that we have is that Henry VIII looked at a portrait made by Hans Holbein, the court painter. He had a very good relationship with Henry VIII. He was sent to Germany to make a portrait of this young princess. The portrait was appealing enough, and Henry VIII was quite pleased with what he was saying, and the proceedings continued, and he agreed to a marriage. So Anne was ordered to be dispatched to England to meet her fate and to become Queen of England. Now, the myth that we have about her being called the ugly wife is because of an incident that happened before the official meeting, and hear me out. So around New Year's Day 1539, the king wanted to surprise Anne of Cleves and met her at Rochester Castle. She had no idea she was going to meet the king, and it was kind of a chivalric romance, a move that he was making, trying to think that if she knew that he was meant for her, she would recognize him. Now, Henry VIII was no longer the most, attractive man in England, quite the opposite. He had gotten fat, he had illnesses, and he was far, far, far from being the attractive man he used to be. When he surprised his bride in disguise, and when he tried to kiss her, she was revolted by him and pushed him away and asked him who he was. Well, there's two things of that. Obviously, like, she was not expecting him to be there. She wanted to be pure for her husband, so she was showing her loyalty to her future husband. But Henry VIII was so hurt by her reaction that is when he declared to Thomas Cromwell, "I like her not. I like her not." And this is when then he said that, later on when they were properly introduced, that he found her ugly. I personally believe that it was a way for Henry VIII to defend himself. It was a way of, like, she probably thought he was ugly. So he was trying to put it on her. "You're so unattractive that I don't want you. I'm so way better than you are because I'm the King of England." So here the story goes that she's called the ugly, that she's like, the Flanders mare, just because she had this reaction at Rochester Castle, and that it kind of like really enraged and hurt Henry VIII. This is what we have based our understanding of Anne, and most of us have just thought, yes, she's the fourth wife of Henry VIII, but she's just the ugly one. And we kind of overlook everything else she's accomplished, because Anne of Cleves was certainly not ugly, but she was also extremely smart. The union was an absolute catastrophe, and obviously didn't work. But where Anne of Cleves was really smart is when Henry VIII asked for an annulment. She agreed. Again, she probably agreed because, hell, I really don't want to be married to this fat, ugly guy, but also because she knew what would happen when you married to Henry VIII and go against his will. Anne of Cleves here was very smart. She agreed, and Henry was so relieved by her exemplary attitude that he rewarded with the title the King's beloved sister. She was still given a huge amount of money. She became really wealthy. She was given lands, and of all the lands and castles she was given Hever Castle, the stronghold of the Boleyns. Anne of Cleves owned Hever Castle until her death in 1557. And during her time there, she made a number of alterations to the castle and spent a good part of her time there. She truly loved Hever and made Hever her own. What I love here is that we have the two queens, Anne Boleyn and Anne of Cleves, sharing that beautiful castle. And today you can visit Hever Castle and feel the presence of these two remarkable queens. Anne of Cleves was really loved by Henry VIII as, his good sister. She was extremely well treated. She really got everything she could have hoped for. She had wealth, she had independence, and she could pursue what she really liked. Anne of Cleves was someone really well educated. She loved the arts and spent a lot of money acquiring, different types of paintings, but also books. She loved writing, and we have a beautiful handwriting as a proof of it. She was speaking different languages, and she was a true influence on Henry VIII's children. What's so interesting with Anne of Cleves is that she had a relationship with Princess Mary, and even saw her became queen in 1554, and she decided to convert to Catholicism for Mary to make sure that Mary would be happy with her. Obviously that didn't last, because Mary I was always a bit on edge with people who had strong Protestant connections, and so Anne of Cleves was not invited at court during Mary I's reign, but yet we have again someone so smart who managed to survive not only Henry VIII's, kind of awful personality towards this part of his reign, around the 1540s, but she managed to survive Edward VI's reign, with all the tumultuous scandals and problems that happened, and then she managed to survive Mary I's reign until her death in 1557. Anne of Cleves is one of a kind when you look at how intelligent she was and what really she brought to the table. I truly believe that we need to debunk the myth that Anne of Cleves was the ugly wife. Anne of Cleves was pretty, intelligent, caring, and kind, and she showed it with all the actions that she had during her lifetime, the way she cared about Henry's children, the way she kind of mingled in this new country, this new life, and the way she built her own independence and freedom. For women in the 16th century, this is absolutely remarkable. Anne of Cleves was buried in Westminster Abbey with full pomp by Mary I, showing that despite their differences and despite Mary's sometimes, suspicions against Anne had a place in the Queen's affections. Anne of Cleves had a real special place in England's history. And I really hope now that we can drop the title of the ugly wife and think of Anne of Cleves as someone with a beautiful heart, beautiful soul, but also a very beautiful face. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week for my video on Catherine Howard, the 5th wife of Henry VIII. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can watch also my playlist on Once Upon a Woman video. Thank you. Bye.